everyone, welcome back to Beyond the Veil Tarot and Astrology. My name is Candice Marie. Thanks for joining me. I'll be your astrologer today. Welcome back to the channel. Happy Tuesday. I hope you guys are doing well and your week is off to a great start. A little bit of a different video for you guys. I actually had a little bit of like a break in content with transits that are going on this week. And I wanted to take an opportunity intermittently in November and December to start talking about the astrology of 2025. Now, you guys may have caught the video that I did on some of the biggest transits for 2025, but in this video, I want to touch on kind of like a preview for this up and coming shift with the North and South node. So today we're going to be doing one of probably several videos throughout the next couple of months on the incoming transit North node in the sign of Pisces, South node in Virgo. If you guys like my content, you want to see more of it, click that bell button below, subscribe to the channel. I'm here every Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, and Sunday using tarot and astrology to try to make sense of what's going on in the cosmos. Give me a thumbs up if you like this video and leave me a comment below. Let me know, do you have the North or South node in these signs? Are you experiencing a nodal return? Or maybe one of the nodes is hitting one of your personal planets. I always love hearing from you guys in the comments and any interaction with the channel, whether that's thumbs up, comments, sharing, anything like that really helps my channel grow and it helps get into YouTube's algorithm so other people can see my content. So I really appreciate you guys sharing. All right, so with that being said, if you guys stay tuned to the end of the video, I'm gonna give you a little bit of a preview as to where the North and South node are going to be transiting for each and every one of the 12 rising signs. So you can get a little bit of like a sneak peek for what you'll be working on for the better part of the next 18 months. Now, in January of 2025, one of the first big transits that we're going to be seeing will be these nodal changes. We know that 2025 is a year of massive change, so many ingresses, all the outer planets basically changing signs, and obviously kicking the year off with quite an active Mars retrograde. So there's definitely a lot to talk about when it comes to the astrology of next year. But I have been really studying and taking a look at these nodal changes and trying to put something together for you guys to give you some insight as to what we might be expecting personally as well as collectively with this nodal shift. So around January 12th, 2025, the North and the South node are finally going to be leaving the signs of Aries and Libra, where for the last year and a half, there's been a lot of work revolving around the North node in Aries in kind of forging our own path, becoming more independent, self-sufficient, brave, and action-oriented. We've seen the South node go through Libra, where there's been lots of karmic undoing, changes in relationships, but also when it comes to allies and people like therapists, friendships, business partners, clients, and lots of changes where we're getting out of our way when it comes to maybe becoming a little too codependent on relationships or other people, and obviously dealing with like a lot of relationship clearing out. So when the North and the South node change signs, even if you don't have planets or anything in Virgo or in Pisces, collectively we feel this shift because it will be kind of moving through these signs, getting activated when we have eclipses, as well as the ruler of those particular nodes when they're making some moves out in the skies. So you definitely are going to see some changes kind of going on with all that stuff. Anyway, with that being said, let's go ahead and get into it. So we're going to see from about January 12th, 2025 through July 26th, 2026, the nodes will be in the sign of Virgo and Pisces. So that's going to be for roughly about 18 months. Honestly, like I said, it's going to affect everyone because the North node and the South node kind of direct us with where we're going for evolutionary growth. If you follow that North node, new, unusual, brand new things being brought into our lives. And then the South node is obviously going to be touching on what's familiar, what's in the past, what we can kind of utilize to benefit us. But also there can be some pitfalls where we can get a little too comfortable, or there is a sense of kind of undoing and releasing some of these kind of themes revolving around the South node. Now, if you happen to have any Virgo or Pisces placements, it doesn't matter what degree, because at some point over the next 18 months, the North or the South node are going to trigger those points. But those two signs are definitely in the crosshairs of these nodal changes, as well as mutable placements. So it's not just limited to Virgo and Pisces. I'm also talking to you, Gemini and Sagittarius. You guys are going to be feeling the effects of this as well. Now, I'd like to talk to you guys a little bit about the differences revolving around the two signs to better kind of familiarize ourselves with some of the lessons pertaining to these particular zodiac signs. And then we're going to talk about some of the symbols, some of the connections, the themes that are associated with these signs, so we have a better understanding of how that's going to be impacting the collective. Now, when we think about these two signs, Virgo and Pisces, obviously there's some differences, a lot of differences, but with all of the 12 signs, it's really 6 signs that have polarity. So it's kind of two sides of the same coin whenever you're kind of comparing any kind of axis in the zodiac. So there's a lot of similarities that you're going to see between the two that they reflect back to each other. Now, Virgo, this is an earth sign. It's the 6th sign of the zodiac. And being that this is an earth element, okay, so this is where the south node will be. It is kind of reflecting on the themes of Virgo. So what it means to be grounded, practical, focused, material, tangible aspects of life, that's all connected to Virgo. Versus Pisces, where we're going to see the north node ingress, is a water sign. This means that they're emotional and intuitive. Generally, Pisces is concerned with fluid. So think of like water, oceans, liquids, anything revolving around water or even storms. And obviously Pisces energy is less tangible in aspects of existence because Pisces has this connection with like other realms, hidden spaces, our dreams, things that are kind of otherworldly. Now, Virgo is traditionally ruled by Mercury, okay? So this is the planet that is associated with the mind. And Mercury governs communication, intellect, and analysis. So as the south node goes through Virgo, we're going to be kind of disengaging, disconnecting, or reevaluating how we're communicating, what makes sense and what doesn't make sense. And there can be some changes revolving around analysis. Now, Pisces is traditionally associated with Jupiter. This is its ancient ruler, but Neptune is its modern day ruler. So personally, I will be watching what's going on with Jupiter as well as Neptune throughout the next 18 months. Both of these particular planets will be changing signs, so I think that this is really important as well. Now, Jupiter expands understanding, and Neptune deals with dreams, illusions, and spirituality. So with that kind of connection to the North Node, we're tapping into these energies more, right? We're learning more about mysticism, spirituality, what's hidden, developing more of our intuition, and anything revolving around also like what we're learning, because Jupiter deals with knowledge. But in the feminine form of Pisces, it's more about tapping into our intuition and growing when it comes to compassion as well as empathy. Now, the symbols that are associated with these two signs, archetypally, we see obviously Virgo is known as the Virgin or the Maiden. And Virgo is often represented by a woman holding a piece of wheat. And this symbolizes purity and harvest as well as health and service. Versus Pisces, which is known as the two fish swimming in opposite directions tied together. This represents duality, interconnectedness, as well as the subconscious. What's interesting is both of these particular signs have the same modes. Both of them are mutable signs. This means that both of the signs, Virgo as well as Pisces, are very mutable and adaptable, okay? So they are very flexible, but in different ways. Virgo is flexible in a sense of how they achieve their goals, but they have this kind of like methodical approach to things. Versus Pisces, which is, very adaptable, but more so in an emotional way, in an intuitive way, rather than a logical one. So we're gonna see the compare and contrast happening throughout the eclipses, and also like the nodes being in these signs where we're kind of leaning more into our intuition. We're reevaluating where maybe we're being too critical or too focused on analysis or details with the south node being in Virgo. Now, in general, core traits for Virgo, obviously we know this sign for being detail oriented. Virgo thrives on kind of dissecting information and understanding it and trying to improve things. They're very practical. They focus on what works in reality and often solving problems with a very practical approach. They can also be very critical. So Virgo energy has a tendency to critique both self and others, and that's because they strive for perfection. But all in all, Virgo is one of the signs that is associated with service. So they're very service oriented. They often derive satisfaction from helping others, especially in practical ways. Now, both Virgo and Pisces have association with health, and that's something that we're going to talk a lot about today. But
Specifically, Virgo has kind of connections to our health and our habits. Virgo also represents and is connected to our digestive system, anything revolving around our intestines, the nervous system, bowels, as well as the spleen. There's connections to all of these because of the association with Mercury as well as Virgo. Now, Virgos tend to, or I would say Virgo professions or kind of like responsibilities out in the world tend to have associations with healthcare. So I think of healthcare workers like nurses, doctors, dietitians. This is all kind of like a Virgo archetype, but also people who are analysts, accountants, auditors, editors, writers, critics, librarians, as well as service industry workers, and environmental scientists or people who are involved in conservation. So with the South Node going through this particular sign, it is safe to say that there is going to be a reevaluation of these types of professions. We might see lots of changes or kind of cutting back or shifts revolving around these professions or these particular topics out in the world. Obviously, you know, Virgo also has a strong association with animals, okay? Pets in particular. So small domesticated animals like cats and dogs, or animals that might be used for service. Like think of like therapy dogs or, you know, emotional support animals. This can be connected to Virgo as well. Now for Pisces, you know, where the North Node is going to be going. So there's going to be much more of kind of like a spotlight being put on this particular sign. So if you happen to have a Pisces sun, moon, rising personal planet, this is kind of really coming into the forefront as the North Node is kind of activating that and kind of giving it the opportunity to kind of grow. But Pisces is known for being very empathic, okay? So they're very highly sensitive to the emotional of other people. Obviously, you know, they can feel what other people feel. It's a pretty common trait for Pisces placement. They're also very imaginative. Pisces really, you know, utilizes, I think, the ability to work with their creativity in their mind's eye. So their minds can kind of be the playground for creativity, dreams, vision, and kind of bringing something together that can be a little bit more kind of like scattered or just kind of like intuitive, and they can kind of bring it into reality. You know, we've all seen people who are like, you know, people who paint or they sketch or they draw, and they have this idea, and then they're able to kind of draw on, you know, their vision or how they're perceiving something and then create a piece of art. It's very much kind of the Pisces energy. They're also known for being very compassionate. And a lot of this is because, like Virgo, Pisces also has a very deep desire to help heal and save other people. But generally, this is much more in an emotional or spiritual context. It's less the physical acts of service, cooking, cleaning, healing that you kind of see with Virgo. This is more like baptizing, saving, purifying, protecting, you know, housing, you know, kind of supporting and offering emotional support and empathy to those who are in need. Now, one of the challenging energies that we do see with Pisces, especially because its connection to Neptune, is that this is an energy that has a tendency to escape into fantasy. Now, the escapism can be things like art, but it could also be things like drugs or mental health crisis. And there can be a tendency for this energy to kind of come up because Pisces wants to avoid the harsh reality of life. So collectively, with the North Node being here, we're going to have to kind of combat some of these challenges that come with both sides of the energy of Pisces. Now, Pisces is associated with the feet. Okay, so with the North Node in Pisces, we're going to be focusing a lot more, I think, on the health of our feet. Are we grounding our energy? What kind of shoes are we wearing? You know, it might become a little bit more trendy to kind of focus more on not wearing shoes or something that's going to kind of help us feel a little bit more connected to the planet. Pisces also has a strong connection to the lymphatic system as well as the immune system and the pineal gland. So we're going to hear a lot more about lymphatic drainage, the importance of lymphatic massage, how we can properly support our immune system, what we're eating and consuming to be able to strengthen our immune system, and what we are consuming that is also impacting our pineal gland and that inhibits us from being able to connect to our third eye as well as our higher self. So there will be lots of talk about detoxification, sobriety, healing, and anything revolving around being able to kind of reach this higher octave when it comes to love and connectedness. Now, professions that are associated with Pisces are things like musicians, especially those who are involved in film or kind of ambient music, Pisces in general does have a connection and association with sets and film. So I think of like some very significant scores might come from movies the next few years. We're also going to hear a lot about changes happening with the major movie studios and anything revolving around filming and production. But artists as well, particularly painters, dancers, and poets, have a connection to Pisces. Psychologists, psychiatrists, and counselors, because of their work when it comes to the subconscious and also the inner workings of Pisces, of being able to kind of understand what we're running away from and what we need to kind of heal, as well as spiritual leaders, healers, and mediums. These are going to be huge, I think, focuses when it comes to work for the next couple of years, and certain prominent people in these fields will kind of rise to fame. Now, charity work and social workers are going to be people who will be incredibly important. I think that this is going to be a hot topic, especially as we are talking about major change that's going on with the collective. Actors as well, they have a connection and association with Pisces, especially those who can embody different personas. So that's connected to the film industry, but we might hear a lot more about actors, actresses, and celebrities. And people who are involved with the ocean. So fishermen, marine biologists, oceanographers, even people who are involved in developing kind of coastal cities. We're going to hear a lot more about these particular careers, as Pisces has connections and associations with the sea. Now, Pisces are known for being compassionate, imaginative, spiritual. Obviously, they're the natural born mystics, but they're also very drawn to healing, emotional or spiritual healing, dream work. But the one thing you want to watch for is going to be escapism tendencies, martyrdom, or sacrifice, as that's connected to Pisces as well. So when we kind of add the two up, it doesn't mean that we're going to overly prioritize one over the other. Even though the North Node is in Pisces, and that's kind of ushering us into that energy collectively, we're going to be balancing out the two energies between Pisces and Virgo. So you'll see themes of both of them coming up. Likely what we'll be focusing on is the higher octaves of both. So with the South Node in Virgo, we are hopefully going to be able to tap into precision, reliability, intelligence, humility, and a stronger work ethic. For Pisces, I'm hoping we're tapping into compassion, artistic talents, intuition, kindness, and a deeper understanding for the human condition. But if we're not properly balancing these energies, unfortunately, we can see the darker side of both of these signs. Some of us will be battling being overly critical, worry-prone, judgmental, and sometimes condescending with the South Node in Virgo. And with the North Node in Pisces, we can be overly idealistic. We have to watch for escapism tendencies. Some things can be vague or too passive, and we might struggle with boundaries. Now, the best way to approach this is to really tap into what these signs teach us naturally. Virgo wants us to be systematic. We need to have a step-by-step approach to achieving our goals and focusing on the here and now. But Pisces likes to complement that by being more fluid, as well as being guided by intuition rather by logic. And Pisces likes to focus on things that are universal or eternal. Now, health is a huge topic with these two signs. These are the two signs that rule over health. We might kind of look at also mental health as kind of connections to Gemini, but primarily the 6th and the 12th house axis is all about health. Where the 6th house Virgo energy is, did you eat your veggies? Did you put your clothes away? Did you make your bed? Did you go to the gym? Pisces is more, did you get rest? How are you feeling? How's your spirit doing? Are you running away from things? Are you ignoring things? And are there habits that are going on behind the scenes that are not helping you physically? So the two are going to be playing off of each other. I think really when I think about the balance between the two, Virgo can help Pisces. And this is where I actually think the South Node is beneficial by grounding our dreams with practical steps and organization. And then also Pisces can be complementary to Virgo by teaching that South Node in Virgo the importance of emotional depth, forgiveness, and letting go of the need to be perfect. All in all, I feel like this transit of the North Node and the South Node going through these signs are going to be pretty prominent. We only see this particular combination roughly every 18 years. And the shift has profound implications for the collective consciousness, social trends, as well as our own personal growth. Essentially with the North Node, being in a particular sign, it's going to really be highlighting that sign, okay? So the North Node is going to be representing our evolutionary path. And this is like where we're going when it comes to society's needs to grow, learn, and develop new skills. So if you have a bunch of planets in Pisces, I feel like this is your time to shine. You may do better with this time than most people. I feel like the North Node is all about growing and learning and developing these new skills. And it's also about future-oriented goals where we're all collectively being encouraged to move towards for spiritual advancement. So it kind of really helps that it's going to be in like a very spiritual sign. Versus the South Node, which is indicating collectively, yes, what we're moving away from, but it also represents past karmic lessons. Okay, so this can be karmic lessons from 9 years ago when the North Node was in Virgo, 18 years ago, when the South Node was in Virgo, or many lifetimes ago. So it's not limited to just this lifetime. The South Node also is tied to habits, which is really interesting. Like habits or behaviors, which is very Virgo, and things that we've outgrown or that we need to release in order to better kind of further our progress. So it's about letting go of these outdated patterns. Whenever I see the South Node, I always think of like this bottomless pit, and I'm always kind of like mentally like, okay, this is that thing that we can kind of fall into and we can get stuck there. So it's like a pothole or something that you hit and then you have a flat tire and you can't move forward. So we always want to be mindful of when there's like South Node transits or like eclipses involving the South Node because it can represent where we're getting stuck. Now, obviously, the collective changes when we're thinking about the nodal signs kind of changing is the need for balance, right? We've got the North Node on one side, the South Node on another side. This is going to be creating an opposition, 180 degrees, where two particular, aspects are two particular, they're not planets, but the nodes are kind of like shadow planets, are aspecting each other in an opposition. So in a way, they're pulling each other, kind of tightly, and we're having to kind of ping pong and go back and forth and figure out how to find the middle ground. So, each nodal shift that we have every 18 months, it's bringing this awareness of a need for balance between two energies. And generally, by the time we get to the end of that 18 months, we've worked through a lot of that stuff, and then we're moving on to like the next sign, and there's new lessons. So collectively, we're going to face some challenge integrating the qualities of the North Node while transcending the South Node's limitations. But I feel like the karmic adjustments are necessary. Society needs to undergo significant changes or upheaval that reflect the need, I think, to address longstanding issues or to really kind of evolve in ways that align with the nodal signs. So this could manifest a number of different ways, right? Political, economical, in an economic sense, as well as societal reforms. So some things that you might kind of see that will happen, like, in terms of like culture or like society, right? The nodal axis, it has a tendency to influence cultural trends. Okay, and you'll see some trends that are going to be repeating from like the last couple of times that we had these particular nodal axes that got kind of hit. So it can influence and encourage artistic expressions, as well as like scientific breakthroughs and, shifts in society's values and things that reflect the qualities of that particular North Node sign. So in this case, it would be Pisces. But also it's going to be about how people relate to one another, and that might change. So for example, with like the North Node going through Pisces, people may have a difficult time relating to one another because they may be unsure of how to connect or how they feel. But by the same token, there can also be this sense of like really embracing empathy and understanding and like connection and coming together and like unification, because Pisces is where things kind of meld together. So we could see that actually being like a beneficial thing, right? In terms of like global events, we're going to see innovative movements. That always happens whenever the nodes change signs. I think for the most part, with the North Node being in a water sign, this is going to be promoting emotions and like, our sensitivity and the need for healing and compassion. Generally when we see this, it ends up also being about conservation and like being more practical. So I think that can be kind of beneficial. It's giving us a break from this like really kind of, hard and fast in your face North Node and Aries that we've been experiencing for like the last almost 2 years. And it's going to kind of slow the pace down a little bit. I do feel like also, with the South Node, you're always looking at themes revolving around healing the past in some way. So it can be bringing up collective shadows or issues that need healing, not just on a personal level, but collectively. So this could lead to movements that are focused on reconciliation, justice, or addressing systemic problems that have stemmed from past issues or behaviors or ideologies. So like with the South Node being in Virgo, you know, the next 18 months, what we are having this reckoning over is Virgo related things. What is and is not healthy, right? What has gone wrong with healthcare? What needs to be changed revolving around, you know, the way that we're managing people's health problems? What needs to be changing with our diets and our habits? Shifts revolving around the way that we look at work and productivity. So we're definitely going to see with the South Node in Virgo lots of changes in these areas, and also probably a lot of job changes that are going to be happening here as well. In terms of like a personal impact and collective consciousness, you know, I think that while these are kind of collective themes that I've been talking about, individuals will experience these transits in very personal ways. It depends on your own natal chart, particularly how the nodal axis that's kind of coming up is interacting with personal planets in your chart. So I feel like if you have anything that's going to be in Virgo and Pisces, you really want to pay attention. Same thing for the mutable signs. You're going to experience some squares, and this can definitely lead to personal awakening taking place or some kind of shift in alignment when it comes to your overall kind of life purpose. Obviously with, you know, Virgo and Pisces, the North and the South Node axis, just in general, what we're meant to learn, I think, to like distinguish the difference between sacrifice and service. Like in a nutshell, that's really what it is about, sacrifice and service. Virgo being service, South Node is there, North Node in Pisces, sacrifice. And so we're going to be really struggling with like idealism and perfectionism, trying to create a perfect world through fixing, you know, ourselves, through fixing other people. And like, that's going to be like so in our face. It's like not even funny. And with that North Node in Pisces, South Node in Virgo, I feel like the journey here is really going to be about compassion. It's going to be about spirituality. It's about surrendering to things, you know, like realizing that there are some things that are kind of like beyond our control. And yeah, we're going to deal with some criticism. There could be some reevaluation of some of our routines. And I think as we're doing that, we're learning to lean into that North Node where it's about trust and also like connect with our higher selves, our spirit guides, our belief systems. And we're learning to kind of like dance with the divine in a way. So yeah, I think that some of the effects that we're going to be experiencing is going to be otherworldly. I think we're going to see a lot of otherworldly things. I don't know how else to kind of say that. But when I think of Pisces, I think of other realms. I think of the other side. I think of what's going on in other dimensions. I think of what's going on in the ocean, what's going on in space. There's going to be a lot of stuff that's going to be coming up about spirituality, and for some of us, it's spiritual growth. For other people, it's going to be about surrender, right? So like with that North Node in Pisces, there's an emphasis on obviously spiritual development. And this could be like intuition and metaphysical practices, but it can also just be about letting go of the need to control things, which I think is also kind of baked into the South Node in Virgo transit. This nodal transit encourages us and, you know, and society, I think, really to embrace faith, trusting in the universe, seeking connection with something larger than ourselves. And it's going to encourage us to promote compassion as well as empathy, because that North Node is about a deeper understanding of compassion. It's about feeling more into things and having unconditional love for other people. So it's pushing us, you know, for really focusing on letting go of our personal kind of goals or our personal gains. It's highlighting on the importance of emotional connection and like selfless service to other people. Now we will see that there's going to be a lot of many themes revolving around service as well as like practicality. So, you know, by the same token, you know, with that South Node in Virgo, it's emphasizing the release of needing to be perfect and being overly critical in our attitudes. We may be focusing on, you know, smaller details at the expense of the bigger picture with the North Node in Pisces. And it's time to learn from Virgo's lessons, not to be overly consumed by all of the details. So if you're somebody who's highly critical, you got a lot of Virgo in your chart, a lot of sixth house energy in your chart, you know, this might be a little bit more challenging for you because like there's this sense of like feeling into things and not being so detail oriented and like really focusing more on either the bigger picture and what we're needing to kind of accomplish and get done, and or leaning more on our emotional health rather than some of our like physical health and routines. Now, obviously, you know, for me, when I think of just Mercury's connection to Virgo and Neptune's association with Pisces, I think of the balance between reality and fantasy. Because I feel like there's this theme, obviously, with both of the nodes getting activated to integrate the two. So we're integrating practical details, with the imaginative kind of boundless energy of Pisces. And this axis is really about finding harmony between the material world and the spiritual world. Now, what's good about this is that I think it is going to lead to healing and a real focus and improvement on health. Both signs are, like I said, are connected to health, but in different ways. So where Virgo is more physical, and practical, Pisces is more about holistic healing, spiritual healing, emotional healing, and focusing on like psychic well-being. So we might see much more of an emphasis on, taking better care of mental health, making changes in terms of, pharmaceuticals, making changes also in terms of like private healing centers, retreat centers, hospitals. There's going to be some changes kind of in this realm. We're also going to see the theme of letting go versus holding on. Okay, so that's going to be a big one because the transit calls for letting go of these Virgo tendencies where we want to control and like analyze excessively, right? And instead, it's about us being like, okay, we're going to embrace this more kind of Pisces flow where not everything needs to be figured out or planned. And when I think about this, I think of the Hanged Man, which is just kind of like hanging in suspension, just kind of going with the flow and, maybe getting a different perspective. I like that. I feel like regardless, there is going to be improvement. You're always going to see that with these signs. But I think that, really it's going to be about selflessness versus self-improvement. We're going to learn when to serve others selflessly, right? North Node in Pisces versus when to focus on self-improvement and like personal service or practical service, right? Virgo. So the lesson here is about service without losing one's identity in the process or or losing our own health in the process. So like where we have a tendency to, be so caught up in our own dramas or our own issues with health, be that physical or emotional or spiritual, we can have a tendency to kind of compartmentalize that and like put it to the side and like focus on trying to fix somebody else or healing somebody else or, kind of being all in with work and like overworking and overdoing things and ignoring some of the stuff that we need to be working on personally. That kind of behavior is going to come up with these nodal shifts. It's also about acceptance of imperfection, which is, I think, such a good thing, especially like in the society that we're in where I feel like everybody is so hypercritical of themselves and other people, and whether that's our appearance, our jobs, our habits, like our finances, like what have you. I think that we're being asked on an individual level to accept imperfections in ourselves as well as in other people. And understanding that perfection is an illusion, right? These are standards that have been set that are so unrealistic. They're making us sick, right? Like we're not capable of being remotely even close to hitting some of these, kind of ideals. And it's time that we recognize that, right? And this could be like body image stuff. This could be perfection in terms of how men or women's bodies should look, how we should be eating, how we should be kind of living our lifestyle. And also I think of like where there is a tendency to kind of like have illusions, like what we're projecting and what we're portraying can be very much Pisces, where, we're putting on filters, we're putting on, makeup, we're putting on all of these things and like altering our bodies in ways that is not natural. And Virgo is natural. So we're releasing this kind of like Virgo critical eye without losing its essence of diligence and dedication. So I think we're going to be much more focused on, are we going through life and applying kind of routines and lifestyles that are going to be healthy for mind, body, and spirit, right? It's not just going through the motions of eating well and, doing your fitness, but like kind of being totally sick mentally. Like we're not going to continue to be able to do that, and vice versa, right? We can't be super well off mentally and then not also balancing out, physical self-care habits, fitness, dieting, that kind of stuff. So we're going to find the balance between the two, and we're going to find out they influence one another. Especially a lot of like the North Node in Pisces is going to be about like mental health connections and how that's directly tied to the gut and like the gut microbiome and like what we're eating and like how food that we're consuming that is high in pesticides or metals or processed foods or things that have all kinds of additives in it that's not good is actually not helping us. It's hindering us mentally. So we're going to learn about that as well, and like where there can be some readjusting and changes going on in mental health and also in the consumption of pharmaceuticals if we were to make the necessary changes, tweaks, and kind of reworking to our diet and our routine, if we're getting adequate sunlight, right? If we're grounding our feet, if we're eating whole foods, if we're getting outside sometimes and not stuck up in an office with a bunch of fluorescent lighting, we're going to realize that that's really not how humans were meant to live. And so there's going to be this interconnectedness between the two that's going to influence each other. So I think a lot of it's going to be, about also trusting our intuition, because there's a significant lesson in trusting your intuition and embracing the unknown. Okay, so we're going to see the two come together, and like moving away from Virgo's need for tangible evidence or proof and learning to trust some of the messages, the intuitive hits, the visions, the dreams, right? That's coming to us, or maybe even in meditation. I think meditation and spiritual practice is going to be a really big thing over like the next 2 years with the nodal shift into Pisces. And also Saturn and Neptune are going to kind of continue to be in these signs for at least another year as well. Now in the past, we have seen these transits before. Okay, so the North and the South node, they change signs about every 18 months. So for example, they're now leaving Aries, where they have been, and Libra, and they're going to be moving into North node in Pisces, South node in Virgo. Okay, so every 18 months we have this change. Every 9 years, we will have the North or the South node go through Virgo in Pisces. So 9 years ago, we had the North node in Virgo, the South node in Pisces. So now this is the inverse of that. So I'm focusing on when we saw previous time periods where the nodes were in these signs. So specifically, I'm looking at the North node in Pisces transits, the South node in Virgo transits, but you can go back every 9 years and you can see the inverse. More so recently, okay, so this was the last time that we had this. It looks like the last time we had the North node in Pisces, the South node in Virgo, was from June 2006 to December of 2007. So you might want to think about what was going on at that time period for you. That was the most recent one. So you can kind of go back and think about, the North node in Pisces, what was happening in your life, what were you experiencing, what you were doing. South node in Virgo, what you were clearing out, what you were kind of learning to let go of. Prior to that, in December of 1987 to May of 1989, this was the last time, beyond that we had the nodal shifts in these signs. And then also in April of 1969 and November of 1970. And then I went back a little bit further to July of 1950 to March of 1952. Each one of these time periods is when we saw the very same nodal kind of transits that we're seeing now. Granted, some planets were in other placements, outer planets were in other placements, so you're never going to see the exact same transit at the same time. But nevertheless, I think that this is really important and rather significant. I'm especially thinking about like the kind of late 80s when we had the 87 to 89 transit, because just shortly after that is also like when we saw Saturn kind of go through Pisces. So at this time, we're actually going to see the North node in Pisces while Saturn and while Neptune are in Pisces together. So that we have not seen, if at all, in a very long time. It has not been seen in our lifetime. And that obviously adds a little bit more oomph to that North node in Pisces transit. When you have two outer planets that are going to be kind of dancing in conjunction with the North node at that sign, it's definitely bringing a real emphasis here. When I studied and I analyzed all of these particular time periods, there was a lot of similarities that came up between these time periods, and I just wanted to kind of give you guys some bullet points on that. I think about, in terms of, Pisces, just in general terms, right? Pisces has this connection to spirituality. It can be about religion. It can be about private spaces, healing centers, temples, churches, prisons, hospitals, mental institutions. These are all Pisces related things. But I think about, some kind of like spiritual revival or new movements, right? And so each period of the times that I mentioned, we saw an upsurge in spiritual or religious interest. Specifically, like in the 1950s, post-World War II, in this era, we saw a revival of like major religious fever. There was a significant increase in church attendance and definitely a rise of televangelism. Trying to say this word. And then in the 1960s, in the early 1970s, this was marked as a time where counterculture the countercultural movement was including spiritual exploration. So we saw an introduction to like Eastern philosophies and like the New Age movement during this time, right? Like yoga, meditation, spirituality, people who are also getting into like, trips, stuff like that was happening between the 60s and the 70s. And then in the late 1980s, there was a resurgence of interest in spirituality with the New Age movement gaining more mainstream acceptance. So we think of like, meditation, spirituality, crystals, divination, and New Age thought, process and like self-help stuff was obviously becoming a little bit more mainstream and accepted in the 80s. Now, we also saw lots of themes revolving around like art becoming more prominent or flourishing in some way. And I think a lot of this is attributed to Pisces, the themes of Pisces, which has a focus on obviously like fantasy, profound emotional expression, sometimes escapism, but music, literature, and films, from these periods often explore themes of love, unity, and transcendence. So that's definitely a theme that we see throughout that. I feel like that was definitely a bit more prominent in the 60s more than anything, but I could see some of that stuff kind of coming up in the 80s as well. For political and social developments, obviously there were big human rights movements. There was big peace demonstrations also happening with all of these particular time periods. So we do see like a push towards peace and humanitarian aid and human rights during these times. So I think about the 1950s where we saw the beginning of the civil rights movement in the United States. That was going on right around the time that we were seeing, the North Node going through Pisces. The late 1960s was a pivotal time for the anti-war movement against Vietnam, civil rights, and also women's liberation. And then finally, in the late 80s, we saw the continued fall of the Berlin Wall. This essentially ended the Cold War, and it symbolized a move towards global unity. And we know that Saturn and Neptune are in this sign as well. So that's definitely going to be something that's going to be coming up in a very big way. Now, by the same token, we can see, because there can be idealism tendencies that can come up with Pisces. So we do see like political idealism or confusion that may come up with this particular transit. Politics can become more idealistic and sometimes leading to confusion or scandals where reality and promises kind of diverge, and it echoes kind of Neptune's theme of illusion. Now, when it comes to finances and economic trends, I think the economic landscape during these periods might reflect uncertainty or something that's like more fluid, changeable. Like for example, the post-World War II 1950s, yes, it had its economic booms, but also fears of a recession. And then in the late 1960s, early 70s, there were times of economic stagnation and inflation. And then finally, in the 1980s, we saw obviously the savings and loan crisis in the United States, reflecting the economic instability. So we can see similar tendencies that can be happening with this, and I attribute a lot of this to both of them are mutable. South Node in Virgo lacks any facts, figures, and numbers, and usually data can be unreliable, and then that North Node in Pisces can be way entirely too optimistic about the future. We do see shifts in economic focus, and I think that this is going to be a shift towards industries or sectors that resonate with Pisces themes. So it's going to be like health, wellness, pharmaceuticals, speculative ventures, maybe like tech bubbles, before the reality check comes into play. I definitely think that can be a theme as well. But on the topic of tech, I think that, advancement in media and tech are definitely a big thing with these particular nodes. Each and every one of the periods that I mentioned saw significant technological advancements, and this allowed, for greater escapism and immersion into different realities. Pisces is screens, okay? So your cell phone, your TVs, your laptops, your iPads, anything that you're zoning out and watching, that is Pisces. So when I think about like the 1950s, right, that was the rise of television. It was a big deal to have a TV in your home, a very big deal. And, people would turn it on and they were just like mesmerized and kind of sucked into what they were listening to, what they were hearing, or what they were seeing. And obviously, it became a new medium for storytelling, but it also became the new norm when people were sitting down in front of the television and they were eating their TV dinners and they were just like checked out. Now, in the late 1960s, early 70s, with the expansion of television broadcasting in the early days of video games, now we have colored television, multiple channels, TV that's on all the time, obviously movies, things eventually getting ready to kind of come home with VHSs, although I think that was kind of more in the 80s. Video games, right? Video games being a big thing that people were kind of getting into and kind of getting fixated on as well. And then obviously in the late 80s, a lot happened. We started seeing that, kind of move to VHSs, and then eventually in the 90s, DVDs. We also saw the beginning of the internet and the rise of personal computing, which ultimately didn't really kind of start. I mean, it started in the 80s. We didn't really see it become a bigger thing until the 90s and then into the 2000s with like the dot-com era. But definitely this was marking a turning point where, the ability to connect online and be able to connect to people all over the world was also a way of being able to check out. Now, Pisces North Node, South Node Virgo does also bring up lots of talk revolving around environmental concerns. So it is possible that we're going to see increased awareness and movements towards environmental conservation, often aligning with Piscean themes. So it's going to reflect the sign's connection to water and an empathy for all life. Topics revolving around water health, the health of the sea, oxygen levels, temperatures, things revolving around oil drilling, oil spills, and the impact that that's having on natural, kind of environments and animals and ecosystems is going to be a very big hot topic. And I feel like there's going to be more that's going to be exposed revolving around how toxic waste and things are actually impacting those particular environments. And I think that it's going to start with, at some point, I don't like saying this, but I think there's going to be a pretty significant oil spill or something that may potentially be covered up only for us to kind of find out just how bad it is. And also seeing and recognizing where certain countries are not doing their due diligence and they're actually polluting water, and it's having an impact on oceans all around the world. Now, in general, for my predictions, and this is, like I said, just the first video, I just wanted to kind of scratch the surface of this, but I'm obviously predicting increased spiritual awakening. I don't think that we need an astrologer to tell us this right now. I think we're kind of like living in unprecedented times. I personally believe, the astrology aside, there's something going on right now where I feel like the human consciousness is evolving very quickly, and we're kind of like at this fork in the road or a turning point when it comes to humanity. The North Node in Pisces does point us in the direction of increased spiritual awakening. And I feel like with Saturn and Neptune being there, it's like a triple whammy. So I'm anticipating a global surge in spiritual practices, with more individuals seeking group enlightenment, meditation, and connecting with the divine, and also the collective unconscious. So this could manifest as new spiritual movements or revival of old ones, as well as religious practices. Now, we are going to see humanitarian efforts. Pisces will influence, a large number of people to focus on compassion, charity, and global initiatives. So there might be an increase in volunteerism, particularly in areas involving healing, mental health, or helping the underprivileged. I'm looking forward to a major cultural renaissance. I believe that this is going to be a real boom in artistic expression, particularly in forms that, transcend traditional boundaries like music, film, and art that evokes emotional and spiritual connections. So there could be a global kind of like appreciation for art that touches on universal themes of love, unity, and transcendence. Some pretty significant movies, films, and major changes that's going to be happening with all kinds of creative media. I think that's going to be like a big turning point. And I think that as we see Saturn and Neptune go in and out of Pisces for the next year, it's going to have a huge impact on the film industry in particular. That's going to be a big one that's going to be evolving. We might see certain mergers of major kind of film studios. We might see some collapse, and then we might see new ones kind of emerge. So we might see some really significant new production studios and companies that are kind of coming up in the world. I look forward to the focus on our health systems, not just health in general, but our systems, because South Node in Virgo says in order to have that, we have to have a plan. So I think this will be pushing for more efficiency in healthcare. It is possible that the Pisces influence is going to be really highlighting the need for holistic or alternative health practices, and these will be gaining more traction. Issues revolving around mental health, addiction recovery, holistic healing are definitely going to be coming to the forefront. I think we're going to be really welcoming and adopting Eastern kind of practices as well. And obviously anything revolving around the feet. So foot reflexology, right? Anything revolving around being able to read the feet. That can be something that a lot of people are going to be seeking. Being mindful also of what we're wearing on our feet and our posture and how we're walking and how we're moving. I think that's going to be a big theme here as well. I am hopeful that we become more aware of where we all have a tendency to adopt escapism tendencies and move away from it. But the unfortunate truth is that the North Node has a tendency sometimes to magnify things or make things bigger, and it makes us experience something on a collective level. So on the downside, there could be increased instances of escapism, whether this is through substance abuse or other forms of disengagement from reality. Individuals may struggle with the practical versus the ideal. I'm anticipating that drugs, alcohol, and a whole wide variety of other kind of mental, emotional health issues and habits are going to be on the rise. And it's going to be important for everybody to be aware that this is something that will be happening because I think that we're going to be having a hard time dealing with these ascension symptoms that are coming up where, we are being asked to wake up, to open our eyes, to see the truth, to be able to embrace one another, to work together and not being afraid, not being scared, not being paranoid. And it's gonna be a little bit of like a bumpy ride before I think we kind of get into this and a lot of people realize that when the curtains fall and everything is revealed as planets are going in and out of Pisces, so I'm talking like Saturn and Neptune, there is going to be a new harsh reality that's going to be revealed for a lot of people. It's kind of ironic that the North Node is in Pisces, which is about peace and empathy and healing, while we're going to have Saturn and Neptune go into Aries, and it's going to be like life's tough, wear a helmet, like in your face, harsh reality, nobody's going to save you but yourself. So we're going to have to balance that energy out. But the good news is that for the better part of like the last 2 years, we've had Saturn in Pisces. So we've had the opportunity and the ability to start kind of getting our sea legs in that department before the North Node moves through there. So I do feel confident that many of us are prepared. I think that when it comes to water conservation, marine life protection, emotional impact, of changes that are kind of going on due to not just emotional, physical, financial, economic issues, revolving around immigration. We're going to see some of that stuff that's going to be coming up, and that's going to become more of a hot topic. But by the same token, it's about being understanding, empathic, and sympathetic to people who are going through those things as well. It's not just about handling it in a way that's like not kind, right? We're going to want to practice kindness, especially as Saturn is still in Pisces. There is a need to handle it in a smooth and kind of systematic way without ignoring the obvious kind of issues. Now, we will hear things revolving around some countries that are going to be promoting borderless initiatives, okay? And that is North Node in Pisces because it wants to dissolve boundaries. So in typical, kind of Pisces fashion, we might see some movements that are going on towards global unity, addressing, the refugee crisis, or, saying, hey, let's tear down the borders, let's all kind of band together. And some countries might be up for international cooperation on humanitarian and environmental fronts by doing this. But it's going to be interesting watching Saturn and Neptune go in and out of Aries, because I feel like by doing that, it could actually, perpetuate some conflict, which could lead to war. If the North Node was just there, I would say maybe, but I think Saturn and Neptune might kind of show us that if we're all doing that, it may seem like the sympathetic, kind of kind, understanding thing to do, but in reality, it may create some strife. So I'm not sold on that happening around the entire world personally. I look forward to people being compassionate, not being so critical. It may take a little bit of time, but I look forward to that because I feel like, in a nutshell, society is going to lean more towards understanding and compassion, and there will be less emphasis on being critical or harsh when it comes to other people. And this could lead to a softening of rigidness when it comes to societal structures. I am cautious and a little unsure about the North and the South Node being in these signs, purely because we're going to deal with themes revolving around confusion and deception. That does happen when we see the North Node in Pisces. There is like this nebulous energy of Pisces that can sometimes result in confusion and deception or scandals where the lines between truth and illusion blur, especially in the media or in political narratives. So it's still going to be difficult getting the answers, having clarity, being able to see everything, being able to decipher fact from fiction. That is still going to take a little bit of time to kind of really see clearly. I do think when it comes to the economy, there's going to be a focus on sectors, obviously relating to health and wellness, but, things are very kind of fluid and they kind of move when the North Node is in Pisces. So, the economic landscape can reflect like a less grounded aspect of Pisces. So there can be economic policies that might prioritize ideals over things that are actually practical. I also think that the service sector can undergo a major transformation. This could emphasize service to others in a more compassionate and like a less transactional way. So it is possible that we're going to see much more of an emphasis on like focusing on our relationship that we have with clients or are with our customers. It may be much more focused on that direct connection rather than, going and checking out at a machine, or scanning it yourself. We can see some businesses kind of go the exact opposite way and be really prioritizing that one-on-one relationship with the people who are, buying and supporting the companies. I do think that we will see some major reforms in health and welfare. I do anticipate this is coming because policies, generally when we see Saturn in Pisces, North Node in Pisces, they're aiming for a much more compassionate approach to health and care. Welfare, social services, focusing on the collective good, taking care of homeless, being able to give back to those in need, making sure people have clothes and safety and security and a roof over their head are going to be priorities. And I think that that's really going to be highlighted, especially the second half of 2025, as we see Jupiter making trines to Saturn. So I do anticipate that being something that's a good thing. Just be mindful of idealism in general. Doesn't matter if it's economically or if it's in politics, I think that in general, we'll see a major push for idealistic reforms, and that's great. We can dream, but so much of Saturn and Neptune going into Aries is saying, don't just dream it, do it, make it happen, like literally get it done. It'll be I think it'll be a learning curve, kind of grounding these ideals into practical effective methods for being able to kind of create change. Now, obviously, just a few things to kind of think about, while we have this, transit happen. So let's actually go and look at January. So we'll take a look at it now. So in 2 months when the nodes are in these signs, okay, and it'll be 18 months, we're then going to be looking at the rulers of these two particular signs. So for the purpose of this video, I'm just going to take you guys through some of the hot topics for 2025. We have almost 2 years to talk about this transit. But the North Node is obviously ruled by Jupiter, and it's ruled by Neptune. Okay, so right off the bat, it hits 29 degrees of Pisces, which, by the way, is the last degree of the zodiac. So this is where everything kind of melts and kind of comes together. We are going to see the first aspect that's going to happen is we are coming out of the Jupiter-Saturn square, which will happen in December of 2024. And then we're going to see the North Node come into conjunction with Neptune. So in my mind, the North Node being in Pisces and the North Node meeting with Neptune and then inevitably meeting with Saturn is really driving that point home. That's like, we got to get real with this thing. This is where we're going. We got to feel our way into this. And collectively, we might all feel like goldfish in a goldfish bowl, literally. There is some major life-changing things that are going to be happening in the spring of 2025. If you guys have been listening to my forecast for a while, I've been talking about not just the nodes changing, not just Saturn and Neptune starting to come together, but also the retrogrades that will be happening kind of like March, April of 2025. So for so many planets to be connecting with the North Node, I think it's very prominent. I think it's going to be saying that some of the things that are happening at that time are happening, because it's divinely kind of orchestrated. Anyway, so I'm looking at the North Node and Neptune. I'll be watching Neptune throughout next year to see what's going on. And as many of you guys know, Neptune will go into Aries, then it'll retrograde back into Pisces. I'll also be looking at Jupiter, which will be going direct in February. It will come back into yet another square with Saturn, and that'll be happening closer to the summer in 2025. But this will be when Saturn is in Aries and Jupiter is in Cancer. So with Neptune changing sign, Pisces to Aries, with Jupiter changing sign, Gemini to Cancer, those are going to have a pretty significant impact and influence on the North Node in Pisces. And some of the best stuff, I believe, will actually be coming when Jupiter is in Cancer. So that's not going to be until closer to summer of 2025 when it goes into its exaltation, where Jupiter is going to be expanding in the topics of home, family, emotions, our home country, anything revolving around domestic related things, property, real estate, that kind of stuff. So that's where I think we're going to see some of the best stuff kind of happening, is when Jupiter's in that sign. Equally, when Neptune is in Pisces, I think that's going to be a better transit for the North Node in Pisces versus being in Aries, where, you know, there's going to be some harsh realities coming in, and you're going to see that people are going to have a difficult time kind of dealing with these new major changes. And some people are going to be unsure, they're going to be afraid, they're going to want to hide under the covers, they're going to want to drink, they're going to want to drug, you know, and they're going to have a hard time getting a grip with what's going on with reality. So I think that Neptune does a little bit better in Pisces, even though it's kind of like behind the scenes, it's not as in your face as it is in Aries. We will also need to be watching with the connection to the South Node, okay? So unlike Neptune, which moves very slowly, it'll kind of go in and out of those two signs all year. Jupiter, which will make one ingress next year. With the South Node in Virgo, we're going to be watching Mercury, okay? So Mercury transits, Mercury changing signs, Mercury retrogrades. These are going to be the periods that are going to be the most impactful for that South Node in Virgo. If Mercury goes retrograde, it's going to be reverberating off of the South Node and bringing up some of the South Node in Virgo themes. So we're actually going to start the beginning of the year in March when we have a Mercury retrograde in Aries. So we're going to see the South Node ruler retrograde over the North Node, and it's going to conjunct Saturn. This, I think, is going to be about major changes revolving around immigration. Systems, you know, how that's impacting the, obviously the job market, shifts revolving around changes with immigration and how that's impacting, you know, the service industry. But it's also going to be about health, and it's going to be putting a spotlight on Pisces. So, you know, nurses, doctors, hospitals, care workers, things like that. In particular, systems that are being set up for Saturn, Neptune things. Homeless people, right? People who also are going to be immigrating back to their home countries. This is also going to be creating specialized care, providing services for elderly, for people who are in need. Saturn and Neptune are literally older people, people who are, you know, injured, or they have some real serious kind of injuries or health issues. And creating new systems for those types of things. Now, can there be a complete reevaluation of people in the healthcare field? Yes. Pisces is jail, it is prison. And so if you think for a second that there may not potentially be some serious exposure or research into people who have potentially committed crimes because of their involvement with pharmaceuticals over the last couple of years, you have another thing coming. I personally believe it is very likely that within the next 4 years, we could see almost like a Nuremberg 2.0. I think something like that could happen. We could see that, you know, doctors and hospitals and practitioners, people are potentially being held accountable, but also this is going to be exposing things revolving around the global health initiative and the impact that that's been having on people, not just physically, but also mentally. So we're going to want to watch the Mercury retrogrades. That's going to be one. Another one that we're going to see is going to be taking place in Leo. That'll be in the summer. I believe that's in July of 2025. And that's going to be primarily kind of going through Leo. So it's interesting that most of the retrogrades this year are going to be in fire signs. They all start in fire signs. So Aries, Leo, and then we'll have one at the end of the year that's going to be in Sagittarius. So certainly when it comes to health habits, routines, you know, things that are kind of coming up from Virgo, action will be taken. Okay, there will be new news, there will be new moves, there will be new goals and initiative connecting to these things. And first, I think it's going to be about individual health, individual rights, changes when it comes to healthcare. Then it's going to be themes revolving around Leo. So it might be about younger people. It might also be about, people who are wanting to gain insight, revolving around fertility, stuff involving younger children, also revolving around, obviously, like work in the industry connecting to Leo. So it could be like, people who are in performing professions, people who are in creative professions, people who are in professions that deal with gambling or with art or anything revolving around self-employment. I think that's going to be a theme. And then in the fall, kind of going into like Scorpio, Sagittarius season, we'll see a Mercury retrograde in Sagittarius, which we're about to experience now in 2024. So you guys are about to see how wild one of those are. But generally we've got Mercury, in its fall in Sagittarius, and then it's going to kind of go retrograde. So this will be more potentially connecting to legal systems, higher education, college education, professors, international travel, a lot revolving around the court cases, court systems. That's going to be the theme. So really for the next 2 years, because it's going to be clearing to 2026 that we're going to have the North and the South Node here, you want to know where Jupiter is. You want to know where Mercury is. These are going to be definitely reverberating off of some of where the North and South Node are in your chart. Now, like I said, we will also see Jupiter and Neptune changing signs. And so when I say that, I don't just mean, oh, it's going into this sign, it's going into this sign. Let me show you. So you're going to see, actually, let's do this. This will be easier. So Saturn's going to go into Aries, and that's going to be May of 2025. Okay. Neptune's going to go into Aries. So Neptune's kind of connected to the North Node. So they're going to be moving side by side, but they will eventually conjunct in 2026. So we've got Neptune in Aries. And then we're going to have Jupiter in Cancer. It looks like that's going to be happening in June of 2025. Okay. And they're squaring each other. Jupiter will square Saturn, and then Jupiter will square Neptune. So they're going to square each other. And remember, cardinal signs are about what we're initiating. So like that Saturn, Neptune, and Aries is like the brave new world, the harsh new reality, the awareness that nobody's going to save us. We have to save ourselves. We have to become more self-sufficient. We have to become more independent, And the Jupiter-Saturn cycle, the square here, is about where, like our ability to stay committed and I think be mature and kind of like show up for ourselves out in the world is being challenged by growth and emotion and home. And obviously we can feel like the optimism is like a little squished. So that's kind of mixed in here as well. So that is the square. And then eventually when we get into 2026, okay, so Saturn and Neptune will go back into Pisces, 2025 right here in the fall. So it's almost like it's going into Aries, we get a sneak peek, and then it goes back into Pisces. And at least in the fall of 2025, Neptune is trining Jupiter. So we've got the North Node rulers in harmony. And this is like where emotion, sensitivity, compassion, intuition is like being met with optimism, growth, emotion, home, family. So this can be a really great period. But it's leading up to 2026, where you're going to see in February of 2026 that the modern day ruler, Neptune, is going to be meeting with Saturn. Okay, and this looks like it's going to happen like right around like the 20th-ish, right here. And this is a difficult aspect. The fact that that's connected at an 8 means there is going to be significant change. And the fact that Saturn and the Moon and Neptune are coming together, I don't know. We're not there yet. But in my mind, like February, March, April of 2026 is going to be another huge turning point. Saturn and Neptune is about creating a new reality. It grounds out our ideas and our visions. And obviously Saturn, moving through Aries, it's not comfortable here, because this is a sign that wants structure and it needs to know the rules and the boundaries. And when it's in Aries, there are no rules. So I think a lot of individuals are going to be feeling lost. They're going to be like, where am I going? What is my purpose? Or it's hard for me to feel incentivized, or it's hard for me to get going. And like the next couple of years, independence, hard work, dedication, physical labor, being physically active, like, and challenging yourself and like really being like a go-getter, like that's the only way forward, right? It's very pioneering in a way. That's how it feels to me. And I think what people are going to need is they're going to need some kind of practice. They're going to need some kind of faith. They're going to need some kind of spiritual practice. Some people might turn to religion. I think people are going to be maybe going back to some very traditional, almost like archaic types of like ritual and kind of belief system, because that's what Aries is, right? People might be practicing their own kind of religion at home. We might see more home altars. We might see the reemergence of some older kind of like religious practices. But in order for us to kind of feel like we can keep things going, we're definitely going to need some faith. And I think that the North Node in Pisces, it doesn't matter if it's traditional, you know, going to temple, going to church, you know, going somewhere where we have a space where we connect with God and we have like our community, or if it's just meditating at home and having a direct connection with your higher self. This is going to be the major focus, I think, with like the North Node being in Pisces. And the South Node being in Virgo is not getting all tied up in the details of it. It doesn't have to be perfect. We don't have to do it the same time every day. Like, you know, there's going to be a sense of having a little bit of like patience and grace revolving around the way that we kind of go about like ritualizing and having some kind of religious or spiritual practice. All right, so I do want to show you guys in 2025 the eclipses. Now, we just recently had a Pisces eclipse that we had in this recent fall. We're still kind of in the fall, but right here. So the Pisces lunar eclipse that we had on September 17th, 2024 was the first lunar eclipse that we had that was a part of the series of these eclipses that would be ushered in from the nodal changes. So this was like a sneak peek eclipse. It was an eclipse that happened obviously before the North and the South node changed signs, but it was starting to kind of show us where our life is going for the better part of the next 2 years. Obviously, colorful eclipse, right? I mean, it was smack dab in between Saturn, the taskmaster, and Neptune, which deals with illusion. So there could be a sense of like having a hard time dealing with reality. Well, a couple months down the road, now we kind of see a lot of people who are kind of feeling like that, or they're feeling more somber, more sensitive, they're more emotional, or they're more detached, or, you know, Pisces energy can go one of several ways. I definitely feel like I've seen it all. And this was an eclipse that was very big. Because of the squares to Jupiter in Gemini in its fall. So because of media, communication, ideas, what we're learning, you know, changing circumstances, things like that, it's definitely enhancing and making some of these Pisces full moon lunar eclipses energy feel bigger. If you guys caught my Pisces eclipse video, I talk about how throughout the entire cycle of these eclipses, every single Pisces eclipse is a lunar eclipse. We do not see a single solar eclipse in Pisces, which means it's all major endings, completions, conclusions, emotional, intuitive. And Pisces is where we let everything go. So with only lunar eclipses there, with Saturn there on and off for the next year, with Neptune there on and off for the next year, and the North Node moving through there, it's very obvious that whatever's going on in Pisces in our chart is like a really big turning point. It could either be that there's finally like this big breakthrough and we're making some dream a reality, or there is some kind of truth being revealed to us in this area of our life. And that we are finally wrapping something up and kind of completing and concluding the themes revolving around that particular house. But this was the very first one. So as Saturn hits 25 degrees, as retrogrades happen, you know, in March and April, this eclipse is going to come back up again. You're going to see it triggered all over the place. Now, the next eclipse that we're going to see that's a part of this series of Virgo and Pisces will be taking place on March 14th, 2025. This will be a lunar eclipse in Virgo. So this is the first eclipse in Virgo that we have seen involving the South Node in quite some time, probably closer to like 18 years. This is a completion because it's a lunar eclipse and it's emotional. Conjunct the South Node, a lot of emotions changing, a lot of us kind of going through processing, letting go of unhealthy emotions, right? Virgo, South Node. ruled by Mercury. And what you guys don't see is right around the time of this lunar eclipse, Mercury is in Aries, so that's the IM, and it's getting ready to go retrograde, which means it's stationing and it's getting ready to change direction. It's going to go retrograde in conjunction to Venus retrograde. So a lot of this is going to be, I hope, revolving around reconnecting and forgiving and like mending fences and being able to reconnect with broken friendships, family relationships in general, because retrogrades bring things back. Okay, so it might be people who are backtracking things that they have said, things that they have thought, beliefs that they had, and reevaluating the way that they're treating people, connecting, and feeling, and reassessing their own kind of behavior. As Mercury retrogrades in conjunct Venus, this can also be a huge turning point where people are learning to practice self-love. People are taking better care of themselves. People are more consumed with their health, their overall well-being. And I think that's another positive shift. But a Mercury retrograde can indicate there's some major health changes going on in the world. A Venus retrograde in the sign of Aries can do the same thing. And both of these planets, Mercury, the mind, Venus, which is resources, going retrograde into Pisces means that there is a huge change coming, potentially economically, and this could also be a huge change that's kind of coming up that nobody sees coming. So that's going to be a whole other video in itself, but that's a very prominent, obviously, eclipse. And for, Mercury to be going retrograde and Venus to be going retrograde 8 signs away from the full moon lunar eclipse in Virgo is profound shift revolving around our own personal resources and ourselves in a very big way. Lots of psychological changes is what I'm kind of anticipating with this eclipse. All right, so then this takes us to the fall of 2025. In the fall of 25, then we're going to see another full moon lunar eclipse in Pisces, very similar to what we just had. This one's going to be at 15 degrees. All right, so the full moon is big completions. It's very close to the north node, so it feels like destined completions, major shifts and things like that happening. This is also ruled by Jupiter. Okay, so not just Neptune, which is retrograde in Aries, but it's also connected to Jupiter. And at the time of the eclipse, it is roughly within a 4-degree trine to Jupiter. So I like this eclipse better, personally. I'm not too wild about the Neptune retrograde conjunct Saturn, but I feel like with the trine to Jupiter, it definitely enhances things, makes things feel bigger. It can be very positive. It can be good also for home, family, domestic things, moving, buying property, real estate, all kinds of expansion in like the Cancer area of your chart. I do think that what's challenging is that, we are still seeing in the background, the sun is coming into conjunction with the south node, Mercury is there, like it's going to be hard to maybe stay focused. This can also be some changes that's kind of going on with work and like job stuff. And this is going to likely be some changes revolving around like health habits and routine. And when we have the eclipses going on in Pisces, we're focusing more on the Pisces things, right? So we're focusing more on our intuition behind the scenes, what's happening privately, that kind of stuff. But still, not a bad aspect to Jupiter. And then we're going to see with the next eclipse, which will be on the 21st of September, 2025, this is going to be a solar eclipse in Virgo. So new seed, brand new beginning, solar eclipse or action. 29 degrees is a critical degree. So it is like a final chapter. So it's like wrapping something up. So it's still trying to get us to shake something out. This is a more difficult eclipse for a number of reasons. There's a lot of opposition involved in this eclipse. The 29 degree solar eclipse is in opposition to Saturn. So we're going to feel like there's something critical happening where we need to have details, we need to have clarity. And the opposition to Saturn almost seems as if we're being held back or limited in some way. I do think this is very much health oriented here as well. The ruler of this eclipse obviously is Mercury, and Mercury is in Libra, so it's in the sign of others. We've got a couple 29s here, 29, 29, that's almost one. And then this is at 0. So there's a lot of critical turning points that are happening here. But with the ruler being in opposition to Neptune, I am predicting that this is going to be very challenging when it comes to being able to relate to other people, being able to communicate, and being able to focus on diplomacy, even though Mercury wants to do that when it's in Libra. The opposition to, Neptune and Aries means that it can be difficult because there is some kind of separation or division, or people who are actually, choosing not to engage. The positive is that Mercury trines Pluto. So it does say that there can be some very powerful effects going on collectively that's encouraging people to unify. Mercury is also in a trine with Uranus. So there could be sudden news, new ways of connecting, being able to share new systems. And we've got a grand air trine with, Pluto and Uranus trining each other as well. Huge collective shifts going on, huge shifts in consciousness and in the internet and like communications. But I feel like all in all, a solar eclipse in opposition to Saturn, the ruler in opposition to Neptune, it's not as easy to manage as some of the other eclipses that we have seen thus far. Now, there will be more eclipses, a part of this cycle that's going to go into 2026, but we will talk about that down the road. The only other thing that I wanted to show you guys is what's coming up in the spring, which I keep talking about, and I sound like a crazy person, but you guys know, I look at things way into the future, and I'll look at it and I'll study it and I'll be like, okay, these are all the things that could happen. And then I do a video about it, and then it's like, generally those things end up happening. So this is what I'm focusing on here. In the beginning of the year, so I'm looking at like February, not even that, actually Venus is gonna come into conjunction with this as well. So let's say from the end of January through April, okay, that's when these energies are at play. You're gonna see Venus, which is going to go through Pisces where it's exalted, so it likes being there. And it's going to come into connection with Saturn, Neptune, and the North Node. So Venus is already in shadow when it's doing this. So we're already going to start to see the effects of what's going to happen with the retrograde. Then we're going to see the North Node in Neptune come into connection in early February. Okay, so that's about embracing the path of being like, I don't know what's going on, but I'm tapping into something and something that I'm feeling. And obviously Pisces can be weather events, flooding, issues revolving around confusion, issues revolving around, emotions and sensitivity. And then we're going to see Mercury come into conjunction with Saturn in the North Node. So this will be at the end of February. Mercury does not do well here. So that definitely is going to be putting a highlight on mental health issues or issues revolving around isolation, separation, and kind of being behind the scenes or feeling like it's difficult to express ourselves. And then we're going to see Venus retrograde. The sun will come into connection with the North Node here around the 17th of March. So it's highlighting more of this stuff. Remember, in the background, this is all ruled by Jupiter and Neptune. Neptune's at 29, critical degree. Things feel like they're kind of unraveling. Ruled by Jupiter. Jupiter's direct. And Jupiter is coming out of the square with Saturn now. So it's going to be about how we connect with our communities, how we're interacting with our neighbors, how we're interacting with people like at, stores and shops, how we're talking to people, like whether or not people are feeling like socialized. Like I think you're going to see a major division and separation in society. I think you're going to see some people who were like out there and they feel more confident than ever going out, talking to people and socializing. And then you're going to see some people who are going to be like really weird and they're going to be like, I don't want to talk to people. I'm going to be silent. I'm going to be in my own little bubble, my own group. Like I don't feel safe. Like you're going to see some people who are going to do that. And these two planets, like I said, Mercury and Venus will go retrograde together, which could mean a huge change when it comes to economics, finances, huge changes happening with relationships. And they will retrograde and come into connection with Neptune at 29, okay, by the end of March. Mercury's going to hit 29, okay? And then they're both going to hit the North Node. How many planets do we need to have show up to really drive home the North Node in Pisces? My God, end of March, beginning of April 2025. What is this going to be? Is this going to be this huge artistic renaissance period? Is this going to be the period where, there is this great awakening? Are we finally going to start to kind of recognize and realize that we've all been kind of turned against each other, that we've been ants in a jar that's been shaken up and we've just been fighting each other and we're learning to be more kind, compassionate human beings? Is there a lot of people returning to church, a lot of people returning to, spiritual practice or study? Is there going to be huge mass meditation events? Maybe. I'm optimistic that retrogrades come up for a reason, that karmic things happen during that time. And maybe this is the time where we all realize that we've kind of been bamboozled, and that, you know, some of the things we've been reading or listening to or hearing on the news or hearing from other people, some of the propaganda or some of the, you know, whatever you've heard may not necessarily be what we think it is. And so I'm optimistic that this is this great awakening point that really allows us to kind of forgive, reconnect, heal stuff, you know, be able to kind of forge and move forward. But by the same token, you know, these are immutable signs, and Jupiter's in its fall. So you're going to have some people who are going to be willing to do that. You're going to have some people that are going to move even further away from the ability to kind of like comprehend and I think be open to that. But such a pivotal time, and so many planets, Neptune, Mercury, Venus, Saturn, all conjunct the North Node within that very short several week period. So get familiar with where Pisces is in your chart, because there is this literal like come to Jesus moment happening with all of those transits in the spring of 2025. What are the lessons? Well, they're spiritual and they're karmic, obviously, with the North Node and Saturn being involved, right? Because that North Node represents our soul's journey and what we're meant to learn, what we're meant to experience. Be mindful that there is going to be major, dissolution of boundaries. I think that that's a given with the Saturn-Neptune connection, you know, with the North Node. I feel like, you know, Neptune is very at home in Pisces, and it emphasizes themes, obviously, of unity, spirituality, and the dissolution of boundaries. But when the North Node conjuncts Neptune here, it might suggest a period where one's destiny involves transcending limits, moving beyond them, and embracing oneness of existence. Possibly engaging in activities that promote spiritual or artistic transcendence. It can be about manifestation, but it can also be about illusion. And so we need to be mindful about the alignment between, you know, reality and fantasy. And it can be really crucial to distinguish between true spiritual growth and what's mere escapism. So Saturn's presence here, I think, with the North Node Neptune conjunction and also, you know, like just all the retrogrades, is really helping us, I think, focus and distinguish the truth of like what's going on in the world. Lessons may come with tests and realities that ground our ideas, pushing for actualization rather than just dreaming, right? We want to see that we're not just dreamers, we're doers. And that's really why I think these planets are going to be retrograding, you know, into Pisces and then moving back into Aries. It's like, okay, you can dream, but, you know, go and actually do it. Don't just kind of wait for life to happen. Watch for those themes revolving around collective and personal sacrifice, because, you know, there's going to be a theme of sacrifice or letting go, either personally or for the greater good, and with the focus on how we can contribute to serve the collective, you know, Pisces. Saturn is bringing this into sharp focus, making the sacrifices feel more tangible and more necessary. I do look forward to the themes revolving around healing and service, because I feel like this time period is going to highlight, you know, healing, particularly in areas relating to mental health, addiction, societal issues that require compassion and understanding. And Saturn's discipline might help push us towards more structured healing practices or work. Let's see. So we'll have challenges with material reality, opportunities for enlightenment. We will be experiencing a lot of life changes and also commitments. I think really significant things happen where we go in a new direction when we see conjunctions to the North Node or Saturn, things we didn't see coming, but also things that might be coming up for us in dreams or intuitively in readings or in divination. This is going to be really important. I've looked at the retrogrades over these degrees and the Sabian symbols, and literally the Sabian symbol is like people turning to psychics when things don't make sense and like figuring out where it is they have to go and turning to divination as a means to better understand the future. So some people are going to be looking around going, what's next? What's going to happen next? What's going on? Why are we here? You know, and like more people are going to need people who can understand and decipher and decode divination, you know, astrology and like the future to better kind of help all of us collectively not freak out and be able to make decisions in the right now and kind of trust the process. So I'm looking forward to all of that. But essentially, that's, you know, the nodal changes in a nutshell. Like I said, you know, we're kind of giving up things that no longer serve us. With that South Node in Virgo, we're embracing, spirituality, personal evolution, maybe a little bit more dreamy, but also trying to kind of gauge how to find the middle ground between these two signs. Hopefully that gives you guys a little bit of like insight in what we'll be expecting over the next couple of months. And as we get closer to the ingress, I will 100% do another video on that. And I like to talk to you guys about what's happening with like the actual events in real time. So with that being said, I would like to show you guys just very briefly where these nodal changes are happening for the 12 rising signs. So as always, I'm a Western astrologer. That's what I practice. I'm going to be using whole sign method just for the purpose of being able to show you guys where the North Node will be moving in the sky. So if you use Placidus, you want to know where 29 degrees of Pisces is and 29 degrees of Virgo is. You might have to listen to more than one sign. But yeah, this is going to be Western whole sign method. I recommend listening to your rising sign. This is going to give you more insight as to which house the nodal transits are going to be going through. And as a reminder, you really want to be paying attention to Neptune and Jupiter, as well as the Mercury retrograde transits throughout this next year to get a little bit more context. All right, so let's go ahead and start first with Aries and Aries rising. What's up, Aries? So Aries, you're going to be experiencing the North Node shifting out of your sign and into your 12th house and Pisces. And then the South Node will be going into Virgo in your 6th house. Okay. So basically the North Node in the 6th house is bringing your attention to your subconscious. This is about endings. This is about completions. Okay. So the good news is for everybody, Saturn has been in Pisces for like the last year and a half. So we've already gotten a little bit of like a preview of what's going to happen here. I think we're already kind of prepared. I recommend with this transit engaging in deep spiritual practices, possibly retreat, from the world periodically for self-reflection, meditate, go to retreats, focus on being in nature, taking time away to just be alone and process. Okay. Your lessons here are going to be about letting go of the need to understand everything logically. And that's because the South Node's in your 6th house. This is about embracing the unknown and the spiritual realm as like a source of insight. Hypnosis, therapy, meditation, psychic readings, healing, divination, spirituality, religion, like any of these things are going to be really calling your name right now. And I predict that there's going to be a period of profound inner work that's going to happen for you, possibly leading to endings or completions of cycles, and also like a deeper connection to the subconscious or spiritual dimensions. Obviously, the ruler of this house is Jupiter. Right now, it's in your 3rd house. So it's more like how you're thinking, what you're learning, maybe what you're writing about, what kind of books you're reading. But as Jupiter goes into Cancer, it's going to be more like how that's really expanding your emotional understanding and how that's positively impacting your home or your family or your relationship with these people. And maybe something that you're practicing more regularly within the home, and it can be really enriching for you emotionally. Okay. Good luck, Aries. We've got Taurus and Taurus rising. You guys are going to be experiencing the North Node shifting into Pisces, the South Node going into Virgo, and this will be the North Node in your 11th, the South Node in your 5th house. All right. So for you, my Tauruses, the North Node going into the 11th house is continuing the lessons of what Saturn has been doing. So it's going to continue to teach you more about growth in the areas of your aspirations, your goals, your networks, and your friendships. So I'm recommending cultivating friendships that inspire and support your spiritual growth and working towards goals that benefit the collective, 11th house. Now, your lesson is you're moving away with the South Node in the 5th house from anything revolving around, friendships maybe that are based solely on utility or shared kind of critique or connections that inspire or heal. I think that this is about finding a group of people that can be more embracing, understanding, sensitive, creative, and falling out of feeling super hypercritical of yourself or being lost or fixated on your own, creative interests or hobbies or even romantic kind of partnerships or love life. I also think that, my prediction for you is that new social circles may be forming around you. And, you might be joining spiritual groups or humanitarian causes. Group activities could lead to more creative or visionary projects with the North Node in Pisces in your 11th. Making friends with people who are very creative, spiritual, kind of bohemian, types of individuals, people who are very culturally diverse as well. And the ruler of this house obviously is in your second. So you may right now be going, well, I'm reevaluating who my friends are, or I'm spending money to be a part of groups or, kind of cliques or anything like that. Certain clubs maybe. But Jupiter is going to go into Cancer. So when it's in your third house and it's trining, I think you're going to see lots of opportunity to like travel with friends, travel or relocate. You might be kind of connecting with people in your local environment. There might be a sense also of like really expanding through learning, and that's helping you kind of connect with people as well. Okay. So that's going to be an interesting transit for you. Definitely a time where you're supposed to be asking yourself, like, who are my people? Like, where is my tribe? That's what you're going to be really prioritizing during this period. All right, so we've got Gemini, Gemini rising. You guys will be experiencing the North Node in Pisces in your 10th house of career and profession, and the South Node will be entering into Virgo in your 4th house of home and family. All right, so for my mutable signs, you guys are definitely feeling it because there's going to be squares happening between the nodes, and when planets square the nodes, it means it's emphasizing that particular planet or sign. So with Gemini 1st house transits squaring, the North Node in the 10th of career and the South Node Virgo in the 4th, this is going to be about how you're communicating, where you're keeping your options open, where you're flexible, where you're traveling, where you're learning, right? And just keep that in mind, as you're going through these squares. For the next, 18 months, the North Node going through your 10th house is really putting an emphasis on your career and your public life and your reputation. So I'm kind of recommending like aligning your career ambitions with a higher purpose and looking for professions where compassion and healing are going to be integrated. For lessons during this particular transit, you're letting go of career perfectionism and embracing a path that might not be straightforward, but it feels very spiritually fulfilling. You may also be clearing out something revolving around your home, your family, the past emotional issues might be coming up, and some kind of changes that are happening for you that somehow impacts either your family or where you're living. Okay, so there can be moves for work and things like that that can happen. I do predict that, your career is going to take an unconventional turn. And some of you guys are going to be focusing on service, healing, or creative expression, possibly with public recognition in these areas. What's nice is that, the ruler is Jupiter, and right now it's in your 1st house. So it's like, how optimistic, outspoken, communicative, like open-minded can you be about making some of these changes? I would say just the North Node going through your 10th house is like a once in like an 18-year period that's like really prominent for your career. But for you to have Saturn going through there as well and a bunch of retrogrades, many of you guys are going to kind of have a complete change in your work, or you're going to kind of quit doing one thing, or you're going to, kind of move to a different type of work or a different kind of career, and you're going to get into alignment with what you came here to do. So it may feel kind of like, where am I going? This is confusing, but it's going to ultimately end up, I think, being for the best for you guys. And it's just about really communicating and being open about what you feel like your purpose is. Hope that helps. We've got Cancer and Cancer rising. You guys are going to be experiencing the North Node going through Pisces in your natal 9th house of obviously the higher mind, higher education, and also travel. And the South Node will be going through the sign of Virgo in your 3rd house of the mind, communication, learning, siblings, transportation. So the focus and the emphasis is actually going to be on the 9th house with the North Node being here. This is going to be really kind of prioritizing for you, pursuing knowledge that expands your spiritual understanding and traveling with intention or some kind of spiritual exploration that you're going to want to be doing. When the North Node goes through the 9th house, it's not unusual for people to say, well, I want to, go to college, or I want to go back to school and finish my degree, or I want to get a higher degree. I want to start teaching. I want to publish a book, or, I need to talk to an attorney. These are all topics that are kind of connected to the 9th house. Now, the South Node going through the 3rd house, in Virgo, is really, your lesson is going to be about moving beyond a rigid belief system or over-analysis of philosophies towards a much more intuitive understanding of the world. South node eclipses here. Sometimes you move, you have changes with neighbors or siblings. There can also be, getting rid of old phones or losing laptops, making changes with vehicles. That can happen here as well. And I'm predicting for you guys a period of spiritual awakening, possibly through education, travel, or contact with foreign cultures or philosophies. Now, the ruler of the North Node obviously is Jupiter, and Jupiter right now is in the 12th house. So a lot of the expanding you might be doing behind the scenes privately through school or maybe traveling or something that you're learning when it comes to healing. But when Jupiter goes into Cancer next year and it's trining all of this, I do see this as a time where you're going to see increased opportunities for traveling, for visibility, for recognition. And also, I think this is going to be a really big turning point where there is some kind of like new and improved version of you that's emerging out in the world. So it may be as a result of something you're learning or kind of working on. And the ninth house is also about gurus and mentors. So there can be mentors and gurus that can come in that can kind of help you. And I feel like for many of you guys, like I said, it's going to be some kind of a spiritual awakening, and you're going to have like a different view or a different perspective next year about life in the bigger picture. And you might be wanting to share some of that information with other people and kind of be like a guide. I hope that helps. We've got Leo and Leo rising. You guys are going to be experiencing the North Node in Pisces transiting in your natal 8th house. And the South Node in Virgo transiting through your 2nd house. All right, so for you, Leo, the 8th house is the house of joint resources, transformation, endings and beginnings, and deep psychological change or healing. So with the North Node going through here, I'm really, recommending exploring the depths of your psyche, engaging in healing practices, and learning to trust the process of transformation. That's what the 8th house is all about. Yes, some things can end, but generally something new kind of emerges and it ends up kind of teaching you about that transformative process within the 8th house. Your lessons are about letting go of control over intimate relationships and shared resources and embracing the mystery and the depth of life. Truth be told, the South Node in your 2nd house can be bringing some changes in regards to resources, your spending habits, or how you're consuming. For some people, they're spending less. For others, they have to work less in order to make money. For other people, they're getting rid of things, they're clearing stuff out. And when the North Node goes through the 8th house, things like inheritances, alimonies, child support, savings, taxes, retirement, money that you get from a joint account as well, this kind of becomes the emphasis in the 8th house. So there can be a lot more support going on with money coming from other people. I am predicting for you guys that there's going to be a pretty profound personal transformation. It could be through therapy, deep relationship connection, an intimacy that you're developing, or spiritual practices that deal with themes of life and death, because that's very much what the 8th house is about. It's about overcoming and transcending and understanding the bigger purpose of, what we do when we kind of go on to the other side. So I could see some people getting involved in like grief therapy, death midwifery. I could see some people that are going into, rehabilitation services, or you're helping people psychologically, or you're receiving some of that support if that's something that you need as well. Now the ruler is Jupiter, and right now it's in the 11th. So really it's about some major emotional kind of changes going on with you and how that's impacting you or maybe inhibiting you from socializing. Some of you guys might feel like that. But Jupiter will go into the 12th house and it's going to trine. So I could see some of you guys having really profound spiritual experiences through traveling or higher education. And also some dramatic changes that might be happening within your home or your family, which is going to further perpetuate some of the themes of the 8th house. Hope that helps. We've got Virgo and Virgo rising. You guys will be experiencing the North Node transit going through Pisces for the better part of the next 18 months. While the South Node goes through your sign, and you're going to see lots of changes when it comes to you. But the 7th house is partnerships and relationships. So with the North Node going through there, you're seeking partners who support your spiritual journey, not just those who want to meet your practical criteria. And this is about moving away from relationships where you might serve too much or expect for perfection to ones where mutual spiritual growth is good. Okay, this is the goal, being able to kind of come together in a spiritual way. I predict that relationships might shift towards like a deeper, more soulful, like meaningful connection, possibly leading to karmic partnerships. Now the South Node is going through your sign, so you're undoing or releasing or letting go of needing to be super self-critical. You are maybe making changes to your body or your appearance. Maybe you are feeling very disconnected from who you are as a person, and you need 7th house people to help you. Therapists, astrologers, partners, collaborators, and you're embracing kind of merging with another person. Truth be told, you know, Saturn going through your 7th house would be enough for me to be like, this is a very significant turning point in relationships, both for those who are single or committed, where big things can be happening. But with the North Node going there as well, I think that this is a very prominent time for you guys. So if you're single, a really significant relationship can kind of come through while you're having these nodes on the angles. But if you're committed, there can be some big themes going on revolving around those who you're kind of closest to. With the South Node going through your 1st house, I would say you do want to pay attention to your health, your wellness, as well as your appearance, okay? So, you know, you could go through these transits and you could have a significant change, you know, cut all your hair off, you know, something changes with your style, something changes with your body. You know, I'm a Libra rising, so I just had this, I'm wrapping it up now, but it's been 2 years of these transits, and like I look and feel very different. You know, I went through a huge kind of like process of, you know, getting rid of a bunch of things in my diet and making a bunch of changes to my lifestyle and not eating certain things, and then, you know, changing my hair, changing my wardrobe. And so it was a lot of like clearing out. So you guys may have a similar experience. It really just depends on your aspects in your chart, but definitely pay attention to what's going on with your health, and also be keeping an eye on what's going on with Mercury transits. Now, Jupiter is the ruler of the North Node, so it's in the 10th house, which means a lot of you guys are having really significant changes to your status. Some of you guys are getting married. Jupiter in the 10th house is like, hey, you know, I've got a partner now. For others, it's that you're taking on new business partners. For others, the change in your relationships is kind of bringing out some new status, and it can be also like new jobs as well. It's a lot of change all at once, Virgo, you know, with planets in your 7th house opposing your sign, and then Jupiter in your 10th house, which is really pushing you to grow professionally. It probably feels like a lot right now. And there's a lot of, one house kind of impacting another, and they all kind of have like this domino effect where when planets are going back and forth, they change different parts of your life. So Jupiter in the 10th house is not a bad transit. It's going to give you more growth and recognition in your career, but it may come at the cost of like some relationship changes. Next year, you'll see in the summer, Jupiter will go into your 11th house, where it's going to be expanding more in regards to your friendships, your networks, and your career. And it can also help you make more money because Jupiter in this house means that there can be some growth kind of coming from your hard work and your dedication at work, and improve the relationships, not just romantically, but also with some of your closest friends and allies. Hope that helps. We've got Libra and Libra rising. You guys will be experiencing North Node transiting the sign of Pisces, South Node going through Virgo in your 6th and in your 12th house. All right, Libra. Well, for starters, let's just talk about the fact that you are Libra rising, so the houses are all inverted for you. So what's traditionally kind of like Virgo 6th house is Pisces, and what's traditionally Pisces 12th house is Virgo. So you may do better with this than some of the other signs because you already have to know how to kind of manage the balance between both signs, right? So the North Node going through your 6th house, Libra, you want to think about what's been happening with Saturn in recent years. You know, the 6th house is about health, work, and service. So as the North Node goes through there, it's really bringing your focus to holistic health practices. Letting go of workaholic tendencies, embracing service as an act of love, not duty. Your lesson is to understand that health and service is not just about physical aspects, but also spiritual and emotional well-being. And I'm predicting that there's going to be career changes towards the fields that resonate with healing, spirituality, or creative service. So you need to balance work with real personal and spiritual growth. The 6th house is health, habits, routines. Some of you guys will work in new places, have new schedules. You'll be working with new staff. Some of you guys will be embracing some major changes to your health and your habits here as well. And the 12th house is going to be more about this kind of clearing out that's happening on the subconscious. So in dreams, in altered states, in a meditative state, in therapy offices, like there's stuff that's going to be kind of coming out unexpectedly that you didn't know. That can be like emotional or psychological, which can be impacting your health and your habits. And like it will literally manifest as issues in these departments. So you need to really be paying attention. The positive here is that, you know, if you're looking for a change in lifestyle, if you're looking for a change at work, if you want a different schedule, if you feel like you've been working too much, this can be a time where you can actually kind of, you know, remedy a lot of that. Jupiter is the ruler. So Jupiter, the ruler of the North Node, is in the 9th, which means that, you know, you want to do more 9th house things. You want to study, you want to travel, you want to write, maybe you want to teach. There's something that you want to expand and get out there and do, but you have felt limited with Saturn having been in your 6th house. So, you know, some of you guys are needing to find the teacher first or the right course, or you're working on your health and there's something kind of going on with, you know, your work or your health that's limiting your ability to expand. And what you will see next year is Jupiter will go into your 10th house of your career and your reputation, expanding your professional life. And it will, the second half of 2025, trine Saturn. So for a lot of Libra and Libra risings, I kind of feel like some of you guys have to make a sacrifice right now. There has to be a change in your schedule, even though you're resistant to it, or there needs to be a change with where you're working or how you're working or how often you're working. For others, it means you need to change offices or locations. Maybe it means that you need to kind of cut back so you can travel and kind of decompress a little bit. Or maybe it means that you do need to go and take some courses or do some training or expand in some way, and be willing to kind of make that sacrifice in your day-to-day work. So that way next year there can be a lot more opportunity for growth and development in your career. So it really just depends on where you're at. You know, it's going to be different for everybody, but it looks like there's something you want to do, but you feel a time crunch. And so it looks like Saturn wants you to deal with that time crunch, and figure out how to be more productive and also how to navigate work in a way that's more kind of in flow rather than feeling like depleting. Good luck. We've got Scorpio and Scorpio rising. You'll experience the North Node in Pisces transiting through your natal 5th house, and the South Node going through Virgo in your natal 11th house. All right, Scorpio, you know, this is a great transit for you. I think that this is going to be something that's really, really big. I think a lot of you guys are really going to see this, especially in the spring. Obviously, the 5th house is a house that deals with creativity, romance, and children. So with the North Node going through Pisces in your 5th house, in another water sign, you know, it's harmonizing with your placements in Scorpio, Sun, Moon, Rising, or personal planet. It is helping you express your creativity through less structured, more imaginative mediums, and it's allowing for romance to be more about connection rather than perfection. Your lesson here is to release the need to, you know, be perfect in every project or in every relationship. This is about learning to take risks in love and creative expression for personal fulfillment in the 5th house Pisces. And I'm predicting increased artistic inspiration, potentially leading to a unique creativity. Romantic relationships might emphasize emotional bonds, although it may not always feel practical. There can be some really amazing love stories that can kind of happen with the North Node going through your 5th house. It's also a very prominent time if you have children. It can be about prioritizing your children, connecting with your children. And if you don't, it can be about having children. If not, self-employment, creativity, self-expression, and romance are going to be things that are going to come up. And then the South Node in the 11th house is going to be about moving away from what other people think and what other people want. Changes with friends, changes with associations as you're kind of prioritizing more of what you love, what you're creating, and like what's going to bring you joy. Now, the ruler of this is Jupiter, and Jupiter is in your 8th house. So it looks like the 5th house, which could be speculative, the stock market, things revolving around kind of taking chances, are coming up right now because Jupiter is in your 8th house. So it can mean that you're making money, there is growth with another person, there is maybe increased opportunity for intimacy, romance, and kind of, you know, like physical connection, which is making this like 5th house transit feel bigger. For some Scorpios and Scorpio risings, this can also mean that there is some kind of joint asset or venture that you're going on with another person that's making you very optimistic about, you know, the future. And it can also be indications of pregnancy transits because Jupiter is in the 8th. So be mindful of that, Scorpio and Scorpio rising. I do think that I would really lean into creative projects and things that make you happy. And those of you guys who are looking to meet somebody, you can meet somebody very significant, especially with some of the retrogrades happening in the spring as Venus is connected to your 7th house. And with like Venus going retrograde conjunct Saturn in the 5th, it's going to be a big turning point revolving around, relationships, whether you're committed or you're single. Okay. Now, Jupiter will go into Cancer next year. It'll be in the 9th house, and it will trine Saturn. So this means that one of the methods of you creating and sharing might be, teaching, educating, training. It may also mean that you're having fun and you're traveling. It may also mean that you're learning a lot, or you're realizing that there is like a whole other side to life. And it can be about, relocations involving your home or your family, moving into a new home, moving into a bigger home. This could also be big themes revolving around expansion when it comes to, love and children, and like something that you're learning about that. And if it's not a committed relationship, and if it's not a child, it could mean that you're working with younger people, or you're connecting with younger people. And that's kind of bringing you joy as well. Okay. All right. So we've got Sagittarius and Sagittarius rising. You guys are going to be experiencing the North Node going through Pisces. That's going to be in your natal 4th house. And so, yes, this is squaring you if you have Sagittarius placements. But the good news is Saturn's been in your 4th house. So you've already kind of gotten like a preview of what this energy is like. So for you guys, the North Node going through your 4th house and the South Node going through your 10th house is really putting an emphasis on the 4th house, which is, creating a home environment that supports emotional and spiritual growth. This is also about practicing forgiveness in family dynamics. I think your lesson is going to be about moving away from overly critical roles or environments towards more nurturing and accepting home life. Some of you guys may have major changes with your status with the South Node in the 10th, or changes with your career or your job. I'm predicting family healing, possibly through understanding ancestral patterns or adapting more flexible roles within the family structure. Obviously, lots going to change in your home or family life, Sag. You're going to see this especially in the spring. It is likely that there are changes going on with who you are out in the world, and you're kind of tapping more into what's going on with you behind the scenes, private, and with your family. It may feel like this is a year that's like an all hands on deck moment, where it's like you might move home, you might be taking care of a relative, you might be figuring out where you're going to buy a property, you might be kind of creating your own, personal kind of home base. All of these things can kind of happen at one time. I do encourage you to tap into your emotions and your intuition. I do encourage you to focus on what's going on physically within your home. The ruler of this, this North Node transit is Jupiter, and Jupiter is your chart ruler as well. And Jupiter's in the 7th. So a lot of the change that's going to be coming within your home and your family or your emotional kind of aspects may be brought on through the support or of another person. So it can mean that it's a romantic partnership, Jupiter in the 10th. It can mean your relationship with a sibling, Jupiter in the 7th, relationship with a sibling, Gemini, relationship with a committed partnership, 7th house, a new relationship, 7th house, and how that's impacting or influencing how you relate to your home, your family, or your past. So, you kind of have it going on both ways, where like relationships can grow, or maybe you're meeting somebody, you're dating somebody, but the challenge is, well, I live here, you live there. Or how do we kind of get out of this living situation? Or how do I let go of my responsibilities so I can kind of finally merge and, be with another person? Or that there can be some sense of changes going on in the home front, which is being brought on by relationships. So it really depends. A lot of you guys will have some kind of status change, though, with South Node eclipses in the 10th house. I am anticipating that, whether it's professionally or in terms of your romantic relationships. At some point in 2025, Jupiter will go into the 8th house, which does kind of bring up taboo topics of, inheritances, death. It can also mean that there is a merger of finances and resources with another person, having access to other people's money. So it can be that there's an inheritance coming. It can mean that there is much more money kind of flowing when it comes to joint assets, and also something revolving around home and property or real estate. So it can mean that suddenly you're married and you're moving in with somebody and you got somebody to help you cover your expenses. It can also mean that there could be money kind of coming in because there's been a change in a relationship. So if you're kind of dealing with an estate or selling a home or divvying up, assets after a divorce, that Jupiter transit can bring you some resources as well. Eventually in 2025, Jupiter will trine Saturn. So you're going to see a stabilization of your home and your living situation because of money earned, money invested, or money that was kind of given to you in some capacity. And you will see all of that kind of manifest as change, which can be difficult, but still something that's going to be pretty good for your home base and giving you the opportunity to connect to your family. Hope that helps. We've got Capricorn and Capricorn rising. You guys will be experiencing the North Node in Pisces in your natal 3rd house. South Node will be going through Virgo in your natal 9th. Okay. And for the next 3 signs, Capricorn, Aquarius, and Pisces, really listen up, guys, because Saturn traditionally rules you in Aquarius, but also it's going to be in Pisces. So this is going to be very personal for these 3 signs. So the North Node being in the 3rd house is putting an emphasis, obviously, on communication, learning, short distance trips, gadgets. It can also be about siblings or vehicles. Here, with the North Node, it's basically about communicating, and it's communicating with more empathy and less analysis. I think it's also going to be about engaging in activities that broaden your mental horizons beyond facts, right? South Node in Virgo. And learning to let go of the need to dissect every single conversation or idea. Embracing intuitive communication, listening to and understanding rather than just responding. So really changing the way that you communicate and connect with people. And I'm predicting improved relationships with neighbors or with siblings, but after a bit of like a rough patch. And that things actually can get better through more compassionate exchanges. And it's possible that you'll get into some kind of type of divination. Maybe you're going on short spiritual kind of retreats. Maybe you are changing the way that you communicate. Maybe you're learning a language, right? Something like that can kind of be happening here. And with the South Node in the 9th house, it is in a fellow sister Earth sign. And this could mean there's changes that are going on or releasing or walking away or moving away from, having to travel far away. Maybe you're completing or wrapping up or moving away from old ideas or education or places that you have traveled or lived in before. And the ruler of the North Node is obviously in your 6th. So this is going to be about how you're communicating and dealing with your schedule, how you're communicating and talking about your health, how you're communicating and connecting with people at work. And maybe this is going to impact something about your transportation and your schedule. Obviously Saturn being your chart ruler, with the North Node coming into connection with your Saturn, it really wants you to pay attention to your communication. And it also may bring up some really significant things for your siblings. So pay attention to that. Jupiter is the ruler, and it will leave your 6th house of work and habits and go into your 7th house of relationships. So this need to kind of focus on communication and understanding and exchange, or, maybe this is about being more proactive with journaling or being more proactive on certain media accounts. It's going to bring you some kind of growth in your 7th house when Jupiter goes into your 7th house of relationships. It'll benefit one-on-one relationships. It'll better romantic relationships. You might get more recognition and more visibility. More people might see what you're writing and what you're saying, what you have to think, especially if you're in one of those kind of industries. Definitely being active on social media could bring you a lot of recognition. So I would say get writing, create that podcast, go and put out, your website, focus on showing up to your social media, because something like that in terms of how you communicate and connect is going to be really important, and it's going to add some significant growth to your visibility and your relationships in the future. Okay. All right. So we have got Aquarius and Aquarius rising. You guys are going to be experiencing the North Node's transit through Pisces in your natal 2nd house. All right. So the 2nd house for you is obviously about your money. Okay. So your money, your resources, your spending power, your values. And the North Node's 2nd house is like, I want more. I want to make more. I want to produce more. I want to spend more. I want to own more. So you're really going to feel like you want some kind of growth, but what's weird is that it's in Pisces. So you're evaluating your values, particularly how they relate to materialism versus spiritual fulfillment. So there might be the sense of like, is more, like, does it feel good? You know, like, or I worked so hard for this and like, now it doesn't kind of feel right. And then the South Node will be going through your 8th house of joint resources and other people's money. I do feel like you're moving away from overanalyzing finances and resources, and you're moving towards trusting in abundance and using your resources for spiritual healing purposes or using it for good. Tapping also into your own like creative skills and abilities in the 2nd house is definitely something that I see you doing as well. I also think that there's going to be shifts in how you earn or how you use money, and possibly towards like, you know, vocations that support spiritual or creative pursuits. Saturn is your chart ruler traditionally. So Saturn being in the 2nd house may start with you first being like, I don't have enough money, I need more. You know, it's kind of been there now, or like I'm tight on funds. But then when the North Node shows up, it's like, okay, but like things aren't everything. And like, you know, I don't need to kind of connect my worth to what I have, and like really trusting and believing in yourself that the universe provides. And then in turn, you're going to see that there's going to be some kind of manifestation of, you know, resources that will arrive as long as you're investing in yourself. The ruler of this obviously is Jupiter, and Jupiter is in your 5th house. So the money that may potentially come right now feels like it's tight, or it's like locked up, where there's still something you're creating or working on, or maybe your expenses are being kind of put toward a romantic partner, a kid, you know, expenses revolving around children. Maybe you're learning a new hobby of some kind, and it's like, it's costly, you know, or you're having to kind of find your groove and like believe in yourself. Eventually Jupiter will break out of that square. It'll go into Cancer in your 6th house, and it will trine Saturn, which makes me feel like health, habits, and routine will improve. You might also move into a new workspace. You might have an expansion of your schedule. You might be working with like a new team of people, and that could also be bringing you some kind of growth when it comes to your professional life and also your money. Jupiter trining Saturn in the 2nd house, like you'll make money, but you'll be working hard for it. But I definitely feel like right now it's about really like learning how to use the resources that you have and like invest them wisely or properly, and get all of your ducks in a row. So that way, you know, as you're getting into the 2nd half of 2026, you're really starting to see some of those things materialize, and you're seeing that it was like money or time well spent. Okay. Hope that's helpful for you. And then we have Pisces and Pisces rising, who will be experiencing the North Node going through Pisces in their 1st house, the South Node going through Virgo in your 7th house. For you guys, it's all about you. And in many ways, you've kind of already gotten a jump start on that, because Saturn and Neptune have been in your sign here recently for like the last year and a half. But when the North Node is in the 1st house, there is an extreme focus on self and identity. So it's definitely going to be about focusing on, you know, self-compassion, embracing your inner qualities, exploring your identity through creative or spiritual endeavors, focusing on who am I? What am I how am I portraying myself out in the world? How am I feeling? What do I look like? You know, who am I becoming? And there's some big question marks there, because, you know, Saturn and Neptune are still going kind of in and out of that sign. So you're still trying to figure some of that stuff out. I do think that you're learning to let go of self-criticism and perfectionism, understanding that, you know, your value does not depend on the productivity or the service of other people. South Node and Virgo in the 7th. Your value does not depend on whether or not you're in a relationship or you're committed to someone or not. You're less consumed with other people's problems, other people's issues, other people's crisis or health issues, and you're more focused on your peace, your security, your kind of growth, and you're going to learn to be better with your own personal boundaries. I do predict that you're going to undergo a significant transformation, potentially becoming more fluid in your self-expression and less bound by convention or the rules or expectations. So I do think that, like, yeah, there is like a sense of like figuring out really who you are throughout this transit. What's interesting is that the ruler of this is Jupiter. It's in the 4th. So a lot of this growth and expansion and change is happening more right now on an emotional level, maybe on the home front with family. Maybe you're going back and forth between, you know, 2 potential homes or 2 living situations or 2 options, or maybe you're expanding your home in some way, or you're wanting to kind of do more of those things. Changes that are happening in relationships impact what's going on at home, personal changes, changes with your health and also your habits. also change and impact your home and your relationship. So it's not unusual with South Node eclipses in the 7th. You know, you can stay in a relationship if it's in balance, but there's less focus on the relationship. Or there can be relationships and people from the past coming back, clients from the past coming back. There can also be people who you've worked with from the past coming back, you know, so South Node Virgo. Next year, you'll see kind of mid-year, Jupiter will change signs. It'll go into Cancer in your 5th, where it's going to be your chart ruler going into the 5th house of creativity, children, self-expression, happiness, joy, you know, romance, and it's going to be trining Saturn, and also it'll be kind of dancing with Neptune in the North Node. So it is possible that part of your process of protecting yourself is protecting your happiness, or having high standards and like focusing on what's best for you is because you're going to launch a creative business, or you're going to be a parent, or you're going to get pregnant. You know, Jupiter in Cancer is usually pretty big for like a baby boom, but Jupiter in your 5th house and then trines to your 1st house could definitely indicate that you're either feeling like you're ready to start a family, you're more invested in your children, maybe you're ready to start a creative business. Maybe you're really focused on art and performance, or dating or romance, whatever it is. And like that good things will come from that area because you've been really critical about your boundaries and also your standards with what you let into your life, or like what you allow yourself to kind of engage with. So I feel like this is going to be really good for you guys, even if you feel like it can be challenging, kind of like stripping away dead weight in relationships and letting people go. In the end, it's going to ultimately materialize as a lot, I think, more happiness and like a sense of like really feeling fulfilled and being able to be more creative in the process. Okay. So that's my that's my intro to like the North Node in Pisces, the South Node in Virgo. Obviously, lots of information to cover. So I appreciate those of you guys who watched this video. Please do not forget to give me a thumbs up, like this video, and consider sharing it with other people. You can come back to this in the future when the nodes change signs, and we can look at some of the stuff that's happening. And next year, we'll definitely be looking at a lot of this stuff in real time. Please leave me a comment below. Let me know, what are you anticipating with this transit? Do you have the nodes in these signs? And what feedback and kind of like info or recommendations can you give us to better kind of help navigate some of these transits? I'm looking forward to seeing what happens. Certainly the North Node eclipse that we already had, the one in September, definitely kind of kicked things off with a bang. So I think some of you guys are already seeing some of the effects of this taking place. And if you are, definitely let me know. Otherwise, thanks for joining me, and I will be back with you guys shortly on Thursday. We're going to talk a little bit about Saturn going direct in Pisces. So kind of blends in with this energy, because after Saturn goes direct, it's moving full steam ahead until it goes into Aries. So both of these transits are very much intertwined with one another, that it's this grand preparation for some major shift that's happening in the spring of 2025. That's all for me. Enjoy the rest of your week. You guys take care, and I will see all of you very soon.